Welcome into Hittin Hard with Jon Chuckery here on Locked On Sports Atlanta. Today on the show, the Hawks by the numbers, and I have a bad feeling about Max Fried. It's all next. Hittin Hard with Jon Chuckery, Locked On Sports Atlanta.
This is Hittin Hard with Jon Chuckery, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, and it starts now.
Hittin Hard is brought to you by Bet Online. Head to youtube.com, put Locked On Sports Atlanta into your search browser. When you get there, hit that subscribe button, leave us a comment or two. We are available to download on all of your favorite podcast platforms, including Spotify and Odyssey. Leave us a 5-star review. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our daily content. Roku and Amazon Fire. Yes, you can check us out there on those platforms as well. And then give me a follow at JMCH316 on my personal Twitter page. So the Hawks go down last night. Same old story. Now a game above or below 500. So it's interesting to look at how many projected games the Atlanta Hawks players, or at least their starting five, because Bogdanovic has played in like 12 or 13 games. He's going to, obviously he missed a whole part of the season. But it is interesting to look at where the Hawks are 35 games into the season and project out the number of games, okay? Because it's the same old story for the Atlanta Hawks. So DeJounte Murray has played in 85.7% of the games. He is projected to play 70.3 games. Trae Young is slated to play 72.7 games. DeAndre Hunter is projected to play 65.6 games. John Collins, 63.2, and Clint Capella, 63.2. Now, that's based upon the percentage of games that they've played, and obviously things could change, and there's circumstances and this, that, and the other, and maybe they'll be healthier. But the same pattern is developing for the Atlanta Hawks. 3 of their starters are projected to play in 66 games or less, and 2 of their starters are barely projected above 70 games. And we came into this season saying about, this and that, but the number one thing that we talked about was the health of the players. Capella's health, John Collins' health, DeAndre Hunter's health. Well, again, 66, 63, 63, that's not enough games played. And it's going to find yourself in a situation where you're going to scramble and try to get back into this thing. Now look, the reality is the Eastern Conference isn't all that good, but you didn't take advantage of the schedule. Remember when we talked about this 19-game schedule with starting with the Sacramento Queens the day before Thanksgiving, that Wednesday night, right? Think way back. Think about 3 holidays ago, right? The Sacramento Queens on a Wednesday night. And it was a 19-game stretch where you had Orlando and Charlotte and Detroit and a bunch of vagabonds, even the Lakers coming up tomorrow night. And you had a few teams mixed in, Milwaukee and the Nets and stuff like that. But by and large, you had a very favorable stretch of the schedule. And so the 19 games, which will culminate in tomorrow night. So tomorrow night is the 19th of that 19-game stretch before the end of the calendar year, because then the Hawks go on a West Coast road trip, and you know how those things go. So in that 19-game stretch, the Hawks were 7-11. Now, again, the game tomorrow night, but even if they win tomorrow night, they're at best 8-11. That to compete in the East and to get a favorable seed in the East. They had to go 13-6, maybe 12-7 at the worst, and they would have gotten themselves to 10 games or so above 500. They didn't take advantage of the schedule. And the number one reason why it's the same old story is health. They're playing without 3 starters last night. Trae Young is out, and Capella is out, and Hunter is out. And every night it seems like we're down 2, 3 starters, hell, 4 starters, And it's the same old story for the Hawks. And again, I sit back and say that if you're not going to go into the luxury tax, then you're going to kind of flounder around. And for this franchise to be a game below 500 and floundering around 35 games into the season, which were a handful of games, by the time they head west and all that, we're going to be halfway through the season. We're going to be 50% through the season. It's coming up pretty quickly. And floundering around is not going to inspire Tony Ressler to dip your toe into the luxury tax. And it's where you've got to live. And so whether it's health, whether it's Nate McMillan, whatever the reasons are, this team, if it doesn't get into the luxury tax, which again certainly is a penalized system once you dip your toe in, but if you're one of the great, elite franchises, or really good franchises, let me put it another way, the Hawks are nothing, nowhere close to elite, but if you're one of the really good franchises, you're going to dip your toe into that luxury tax. And the fact that the Hawks have not gotten to that point yet speaks volumes about this roster, the coach. And again, I keep going back to this point, but it really is a situation where you have to spend money. You have to lock up your guys. You have to spend money. You have to be willing to do some things that, without gutting your team or whatever like that. If you have a really young team and you can afford to not get into the luxury tax and, but when you get into super max players and max contract guys and even John Collins at $25 million a year, I think they're going to break this thing up. I really do think that. I think Bogdanovich is the most likely candidate to get traded. He's a very team-friendly deal. I think he's most likely to get traded. And I would not be surprised if John Collins, ends up being traded at the deadline. And if that happens, again, 65, 66 games, 63 games, 63 for, it's just not enough games. And this team is being hurt by 2 and 3 starters every night being out. So if the projections come out right, it will probably be most likely a disappointing season for the Atlanta Hawks based upon the number of the games played. All right, I want to talk about my friends over at BetOnline. Listen, betonline.net is your number one source for all your sports wagering information. Listen, head to betonline.net today. Take that mobile device. It's really easy to do. Take the mobile device, head to betonline.net, and when you get there, check out all the news and information that they have to make you a smarter sports bettor. Scores, stats, podcast news and information, all the information there. And then get in on the action. College football bowl games, NFL regular season, NBA, college basketball, NHL, whatever you are into, you can get in on the action at betonline.net. So take the mobile device, head to betonline.net today, get in on the action. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all of your sports wagering information. And we want to remind you, besides making Hittin Hard with Jon Chuckery your first listen every day, make Locked On Sports Today your second listen every day. biggest stories of the day, instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. They're available on Odyssey, YouTube, or wherever you get your favorite podcast from. I have a bad feeling about Max Fried. Given the way that they have sort of undervalued pitchers, and I know they gave $20 million to Charlie Morton, and I know that they signed Spencer Strider. But I don't think that they are going to overspend on a starting pitcher. And look, we just saw this with Dansby Swanson. You know, they value team-friendly deals. They value when a player is in a position to really cash in. And again, I'm not saying that the Atlanta Braves are cheap. I'm not saying that they're cheap with it. But when a guy is really ready to cash in, Dansby was really ready to cash in. Freddie was really ready to cash in. Well, Max Fried is the best left-hander in baseball. He's really about to cash in. And so with that, I just don't think that the Atlanta Braves will come off the hip for the kind of contract. Listen, they don't want to get into a position where a particular player represents an and again, there's not a self-imposed cap or anything like that, but they don't want to get in the position where a particular player represents a certain percentage of their salary cap. And I just don't think that they will give up $25-30 million a year for a starting pitcher. I really believe that they look at taking that $25-30 million and splitting it amongst 2 or 3 players. They don't value one particular guy eating up a big chunk of their cap. And so I have a bad feeling about Max Fried. Now, again, Max Fried is under arbitration for this year, roughly about probably $13 million, give or take or whatever like that. And then he's under arbitration for next year. And then after that, he walks. And again, he's going to be 30 years old. All right. Which in baseball terms is really not that old. I mean, again, we're seeing the Justin Verlanders and we're seeing the Max Scherzers. We're seeing those guys pitch into their mid-late 30s and early 40s, right? We're seeing guys, look, Justin, and I'm not comparing Justin Verlander to Max Fried, but Max Fried is still the best left-hander in baseball. But Justin Verlander has come back from multiple injuries and things like that to still be the top of the rotation, top flight starter, in Major League Baseball. But I just don't think that they are going to give a contract that eats up so much money and for a long term. Listen, maybe Max Fried would go on a 2 or 3 year deal, but I don't think that's reality. I mean, based upon the fact that they offered Dansby Swanson $100 million for 6 years, they didn't even give him market value. Market value would have been $138 million, which would have still been significantly less than the 177 that he ultimately signed for. But it would have probably met you in the middle. But they were not going to have a player represent that much of a hit against their overall cap number. So I just don't think that Max Fried is probably in the long-term plans. They have Strider. They have Kyle Wright. They'll probably sign, a veteran or two over these next few years. But when it comes to Max Fried, I just don't think they'll come off with the cash. And by the way, you see these guys, he may not get $45 million a year, the Verlanders and the Scherzers and things like that. But certainly he's going to command a premium. Certainly a left-handed starter who's at the top of his game is certainly going to command a premium. And again, 30 years old is not over the hill, even in baseball terms. 30 years old is not over the hill. But I just don't think that they're not going to allocate $250 million, even $200 million. I just don't get that sense that the Braves are willing to commit that kind of money. All right, I want to talk about my friends over at Built Bar. Listen, Built.com is the place to go for all of your low sugar, low calorie, low carb, but high protein snacks. So listen, everybody is getting to the first of the year. We're going to get back into the fitness. We're going to eat better, right? We're all proclaiming that we're going to be healthier and this and the other. Well, Built.com is one of the places to go to get on track from a nutritional standpoint. So head to Built.com today. Check out the protein-infused marshmallow puffs that is so good for a little different taste and texture. But they have new flavors coming out every month, new product lines coming out every month. But if you're looking for high protein, low sugar, low carb, low calorie types of snacks, Built Bar is the place to go. Listen, I carry around Built Bars. I have one in my car. I have some at home here. I love Built Bar, and it is a convenient snack. And I know I'm teasing myself with chocolate and this, that, and the other, but still coming up with a more nutritional snack. So head to Built.com today, and then when you get your order together, put in the promo code LOCKEDON15 to save 15% off. LOCKEDON, the number 1, the number 5, and you save 15% off of your order simply by using the promo code LOCKEDON. LOCKEDON15. The promo code will save you 15% off. Head to Built.com today. But I just don't feel like the Atlanta Braves are going to commit. And I don't think that, listen, they just signed Sean Murphy to like $73 million for 6 years. And he's arguably the number 1 or number 2 best defensive catchers in Major League Baseball. And he's a young up-and-coming guy. I mean, again, he's in his mid to late 20s. So, in baseball terms, maybe it's a little bit older for a catcher. But you still see Travis d'Arnaud hitting into his mid-30s or whatever like that. But I just don't think they'll allocate the resources. I don't think that they'll have a player on the books that represents that kind of salary, $25, $30 million. And again, we just saw Dansby Swanson, get a premium amount of money. I think the same thing is going to happen with Max Fried. I just don't think that the Braves are going to sign him to long term. All right. Thank you so much for making Hittin' Hard with Jon Chuckery your first listen every day. Make Locked On Sports Today your second listen every day. Biggest stories of the day, instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day available on Odyssey or wherever you get your favorite podcast platforms from. Head to youtube.com, put Locked On Sports Atlanta into your search browser. When you get there, hit that subscribe button, leave us a comment. We are free and available to download on Spotify and Odyssey and all of your favorite podcast platforms. Hit that subscribe button. Roku and Amazon Fire is the place to go. Check us out on those platforms as well. And then follow me at JMCH316 on my personal Twitter page. Back with you tomorrow. This has been Hittin' Hard with Jon Chuckery, Locked On Sports Atlanta.